Mark, you're a man. You do a lot of things. You're VFX. You do directing. You've worked on a number of films and have helped them become very successful.
Thank
And
you.
I even went back and took a look this afternoon on the internet, and I noticed that you even worked on E.T.
I worked on the re-release of E.T.
Okay.
Not the original E.T., which was well before my time. I think I was 8 when E.T. came out.
Oh, really?
Okay, 9. Sorry, 9.
Oh, you said you're rubbing it in.
But I did. I coordinated the effects on the re-release of E.T., which was a pleasure to do. I don't know that any of it was really important work or necessary work, because I think the movie was pretty amazing on its own.
Right.
And I think ultimately, even Steven Spielberg went back to the idea that the original E.T. was pretty solid on its own. Yeah. I mean, we did things. We added some new scenes, and we did some stuff. We cleaned up some things that he was never happy with, and we did a few other things that I'm not going to talk about. But,
Yeah. So you've got quite an impressive videography.
Thank you.
Biography of video films that you're in. What are some of the films that led up to the current one that you're working on, which is it's called The Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah. I've sort of become the first. Well, not the first. One of the few go-to visual effects people who lives in New York. So there's a certain category of movie that when they get here and they need a visual effects supervisor, if it's not a movie that has $20 million worth of effects that's all going to get managed by a big team near a large facility, then I'm one of the first calls.
Wow.
So it took me a lot of years to get to that point, and I think a lot of that came from choosing the projects I worked on and trying to make them projects that are based and finished here in New York City. So I've been a big proponent of trying to build the effects community here in town, and we're still very small, and have a lot of growing to do to match places like Los Angeles and Vancouver and London, and but we're growing, and I think there's a lot of really interesting work and a lot of talented people here in New York that can get a lot done.
Yeah, definitely.
And the tax incentives don't hurt.
Oh, they're giving special.
There
tax
is a New York tax incentive, and there has been for about 5 years now.
And who does that apply to?
It applies to the qualifications just changed, but it used to be that in order to qualify for the post side of it, you had to shoot and spend 75% of your original production budget here in New York, either New York City or New York State. They've since relaxed that a bit, so I believe now you only need to spend 30% of your post budget here in New York in order to qualify for what is essentially a 30% tax rebate.
Wow.
So yeah, it really makes us competitive.
That's great. That's great. So tell me a little bit about the movie you're working on right now.
Sadly, I can't tell you very much about the movie I'm working on now.
A little bit.
It's called The Wolf of Wall Street. It's directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Jonah Hill. Rob Legato is the effects supervisor. I am producing with him. As I mentioned this morning, it's not what you would traditionally think of as a big effects movie.
Yeah.
It does have some really interesting, meaty sequences. But on the whole, it's sort of on the medium to smallish effects side.
But they're the kind of effects that you never realize they're effects. That's the idea.
That's the goal.
It's just
Yeah.
it's seamless.
I mean, there are certainly things that the reason they're effects are because we can't easily shoot them effectively and as dramatically as we can without using visual effects.
Yeah, you brought up a case in point this morning, I think, about somebody who's had too much to drink flying a helicopter around crazily, right?
Right, which
And,
is clearly not
yeah.
something you want to do over a residential neighborhood.
Right, and or with a real person in a real helicopter.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
they call in visual effects for us to augment scenes like that. I mean, the story of The Wolf of Wall Street, which I'm sure you'll start to be inundated by soon, is pretty amazing. It's based on a true story, an autobiography by a guy named Jordan Belfort, who had a very interesting life. He was very much, he made a lot of money very early and got caught up in drugs and greed and money. So this movie explores that.
That's going to be fascinating. When is it supposed to be released?
Sometime before the end of the year. I don't know exactly.
Oh, that's soon.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're doing a lot of posts now, or?
We are. I've been in post for 7 months now. Wow. So we're sort of in the last leg.
The last leg, huh? and inch by inch.
Exactly.
People don't realize how much effort goes into these things, and
Yeah, it's been-
how much every minute, how many days every minute takes. Of a movie,
Exactly,
right? I
exactly.
guess
But
if
you know,
put it that way.
it's been a good job. I'm working with really incredibly talented and smart people, which is not always the case. So that's
Yeah.
nice.
So we're here at an HP thing. How does HP fit into this whole world of yours?
HP has become a really integral part of a lot of the things we do. A lot of my process on this movie is converting files and transcoding things and color correcting things. So it's dealing with large volumes of footage, essentially, and making sure that everybody gets what they need in order to complete their tasks on the film. By using HP workstations, I've been able to do that quickly and efficiently. Which has been a huge help because a lot of my job is managing all of that information that comes in and then filtering it and getting it back out to the right people. So without the workstation, I have a Z420 in my office, and without that, it would be taking a lot longer to do the things that I do. And in a job like mine, speed is essential because if you can't provide the material that people need quickly as things change, then things don't get done and everybody gets angry.
Yeah, a lot of studios happen to use HP. I know
Yeah,
that. I know
yeah.
that DreamWorks uses them, and a bunch of other studios. So they must be doing something right.
Yeah, I think they're really well-built machines that are easily configurable and accessible.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a big difference because the last thing you want when you're in the middle of a delivery is to have to find your screwdriver to open up the case and figure out why things aren't working.
Yeah, time is money.
Yeah,
And,
exactly. So you want a machine that's solid, that's reliable, and fast.
Yeah, and the other thing is that today's introduction of these new portables, I guess you'd like to have a couple of those yourself.
Oh, it'd be really nice. I mean,
Yeah.
so much of the way my job usually works is I think of it in thirds. During prep and pre-production, we do a lot of time planning. We spend a lot of time budgeting, figuring out how we're going to achieve the things that we want to achieve. Then you get into production, and there really isn't time to think about anything else, let alone just to keep up with what's going on. And you're never in one place for more than a couple days. So it's constantly moving around, and the idea of having a workstation that's portable that I can take anywhere I want and work on the set, in the corner, around the bend, always trying to be within earshot of what's going on in case something comes up. Because with visual effects, even though you can plan everything, a lot of the times you'll get into a situation where someone will say, we don't have that, or we can't do this, or this is wrong, so we need visual effects to come fix it. So I always try and keep myself within earshot of Video Village, or where the director is and hiding out. And so it's great to be able to have a workstation that I can do just about anything on, wherever I am. It was a really big help for us.
That's really going to be. I'd love to have one myself. I mean, just even if say people when you're working in Maya and stuff like that, when you're working with those tools, you can just do it right there on your laptop, on the airplane, or out in the backyard, or on wherever you are in the world.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about having a big piece of machinery to lug around with you. So it's going to open up a lot of possibilities.
You can edit entire films on laptops nowadays,
Yeah.
which is just incredible. And I think effects is the same. I've spent actually a lot of time rendering things on laptops on smaller jobs or when I'm out of town. I bring everything with me, set it up to run overnight, wake up in the morning, and there's a finished product. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the faster they can make those machines, the happier I get.
Yeah, yeah. So you're going to finish this film up in the next few months, I guess.
I hope so.
And you're going to take a break?
Yeah, a short one. I'm not very good at breaks. It's certainly something that I could use more practice.
Yeah.
For me, a break is only good if you know when your next job is starting. I'm not very good at taking off time without knowing what's coming next.
That's what I was going to ask.
So the goal is to try and lock that in before I finish. But
yeah. And then take a break and know where you're going the next step,
exactly.
right? So
I think the timing is good, so that hopefully I'll be finished before the end of the year, and I'll get a couple weeks off before January.
So how long, just out of curiosity, how long are how long is a typical project for you? Is your
It's about 15 months.
Okay.
On average, I would say. Maybe some are a little bit less, some are longer. The more effects, the longer they tend to go. Sometimes post schedules get extended, sometimes they get abbreviated.
Yeah.
But yeah, on average, it's been about a year and 3 months.
Yeah. Do you call in other people to help you with these effects?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I do very little of the work myself. Certainly now on this job, I'm producing, so I deal more with the contracts and the money and the logistical part of it. I also try and weigh in creatively when the time is appropriate. But yeah, so basically, my role is to make sure that all of the different facilities and individuals and vendors who we have working on the movie have everything they need to accomplish what we need, and make sure that they're working to our specs, and make sure that everything goes very smoothly as far as deliveries are concerned.
I have a question.
Okay.
What got you involved in this industry, and like, what was your first project? What was it like?
Interesting.
How did you start?
You know, I was an actor for a long time. Thought I wanted to be an actor since I was 5. But part of that for me was just about being around entertainment and film, essentially. So at 7, 8 years old, I was making short films with friends on 8mm film, and doing a lot. I think we recreated one of the Star Wars movies back when we were not even teenagers. So I always kind of knew where I was headed in the entertainment world, and I went to school in Los Angeles, and I think realized that acting as a profession is not as all-encompassing as I needed. I really wanted something that allowed me to be creative on both sides, and acting in theater was what I really enjoyed the most, and that wasn't a lifestyle that I really wanted. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to live where I wanted to live. I didn't want to have to be whisked off to different theaters. And after I graduated from college, I went to work as a production assistant. I did a couple really terrible TV movies, and then I ended up getting a job at Amblin Entertainment. So for me, that was like the pinnacle. This was like the mid '90s, so it was like the pinnacle of filmmaking, and I was a production assistant at the mecca of film. And I learned a lot from the people around, and the thing I learned the most is that, like any other business, even if you're at the place that seems to be the best, there are all kinds of caliber of people, and I think good people tend to rise to the top quickly, even at places where you think everyone is a good person. So there were a lot of opportunities there for somebody who was eager and had a good attitude and always smiled. From there, I learned very quickly that I understood the way visual effects worked, more so than most of the people around me. I grew up in a household where we always had computers around. My dad was an electrical engineer from MIT, was one of the original guys who developed the ARPANET before the internet. So we always had computers around, and he was a big networking guy. So it was sort of in my DNA, and I had a lot of understanding of that as a kid. So I was able to speak film, and I was able to speak tech. And at the time, there weren't very many people who could do that, so it was kind of a natural fit to gravitate that direction. And I ended up working on some really amazing projects with incredible people who believed enough in me to allow me to do that. So it gave me a lot of confidence early on, which was great.
Did your family discourage you into going into entertainment, or?
Not really. I think my grandmother at one point told my parents that I needed to have something to fall back on, like accounting. Yeah. Clearly, I'm not an accountant, nor will I ever want to be an accountant. But no, my parents were always very supportive, and obviously going to school studying acting is probably a big leap for a lot of parents to take, and especially it's such a competitive business, and a business where most people, 99% of the people in performance-related fields, don't succeed, at least throughout their entire career. So I credit my parents a lot for always being supportive, regardless of what I wanted to do. But early on, I knew this was it.
Do you feel like you're involved in a lot of work with creative people, or do you feel like you're involved with a lot of work with not creative and just kind of do you feel like you're with more creative people than less creative people?
Absolutely. I would say in my business, 85% of the people are very creative people, which has its own challenges. I think a lot of time it's more frustrating than working with people who aren't, because everybody wants to have their say.
And they're all good ideas, too.
And a lot of time they're very good ideas.
Yeah.
So I feel like this industry in particular is it's a magnet for creative people. You're always finding whatever you're working on that everybody does. Not only do they do their job, but they also have 15 things going on the side. And I feel like that's a result of creative people. You need to, if you're not totally content with what you're doing at the moment, you're going to find other outlets to.
I just want to know, in the beginning of your learning and education of technology, to understand how to render and how to do all that, how long was the process? When you actually develop skill, okay, you're educating yourself, you're becoming better, and then you could actually use for a project because you have the skill and capability.
Well, my original background in production, I worked for a producer back at Amblin and DreamWorks that was always on set and was really involved in the process. So I kind of got a bird's eye view that most people don't have access to early on, and I think that allowed me to sort of to see what was necessary to do that job. And I'm very much an observer, and I like to sort of process and understand what everybody's doing before I interject my own opinion. So part of that was learning how to interact on a film set, and frankly, I think a lot of my success comes out of the fact that I came as a production person first before visual effects, because I think visual effects people tend to not fully understand how the process of a movie works and the production of a movie and all of the elements that go into that. And coming from a world where my first experience was working for a producer who had her hand in everything, gave me a lot of insight into the fact that what I need as a visual effects person is not the only and oftentimes not the most important factor in the decisions that get made. So I think once you can open yourself up to the idea that you're part of a group of people all trying to achieve a goal, it makes it a lot easier to work on set. So for me, as far as learning how to actually do the things, that just came after jumping in. And I'm very much I'll figure anything out kind of a person. You throw me into a dark room and I'll figure out a way to turn the lights on. And it was a lot of that. And when I had certain jobs that allowed me the time to do it, that's when I started learning how to composite. So I was working in effects and I was producing effects from the financial standpoint before I had any idea how they were actually done on a shot-by-shot basis. So it wasn't until after that that I started to get more of an understanding for the process of actually creating individual visual effects and what was required to do all of that. So it came over time, and it's still one of those things that I will constantly be learning. And every job's different.
Yeah, like when you have a software tool that's complex, like a Maya, right? If I guess if you have an idea in your mind, and you know that tool will allow you to reach that goal, but you don't know how to do it. But you just know that you'll be able to reach that what's in your mind. So if you just focus on getting your job done using that tool, you don't have to learn the whole tool.
Right.
You just have to get what.
And a lot of my job when I'm supervising, even as a producer, is to communicate to the people who I know can achieve that what it is that I'm after.
Right.
So I think for me that's probably the most important part about the job is understanding how to get other people to understand what it is that I want. Certainly if I can't do it myself, then I have to be able to communicate that to other people, otherwise it just gets frustrating. So I try and practice communication as much as I can. I think you have to figure out how you communicate from your own style and then translate that into what it is you need.
Hey Mark, I don't want to take all your whole day.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.